My name's Jason Evans and I call myself a photographer. It's a passport that allows me to go off and satisfy my curiosity. I'm inspired by and informed by all different kinds of culture, from music, cooking, haircuts, the style of a teenager, the style of a granny. It doesn't matter. I mean, I define culture as everything that we do. The Tate has some of my early kind of fashion work. We were thinking about ways of circumventing the typical narrative of a fashion image by making combinations that perhaps seem unlikely. In this instance, the conflation was a black British youth in a white identified space, British suburbia, wearing clothing that harked back to this idea of a dandy. I see fashion photography as an interesting place to talk about things like ethnicity or gender roles or consumption. I mean, it's basically propaganda, isn't it? Fashion photography, and you can bring your own narrative to that propaganda. I moved to Ramsgate 5 years ago, and I ended up living in Pegwell Bay, and the environment started to have an effect on my life. I decided that I was going to try and make some work about Pegwell, and regularly observed the changes in the environment and photographed the environment until I had this kind of breakthrough image. And the image itself, I mean, the reason it was kind of a revelation was that I was photographing almost nothing. It's very unusual to encounter a place where you can witness something as simple as light passing through water, moved by wind, moving across sand. I mean, there's those so few elements in your frame of your camera. The longer I stalked this environment, the more aware I became of the interplay between these kind of cosmic forces on a minute locale. You start to realise that there's all this weird history just south of Pegwell. It wasn't the first time that Romans had tried to invade Britain, but it was the first successful attempt. This is where Christianity arrived in Britain. And then you've got Pfizer's factory, which is where they invented Viagra. And then one day I was in the Tate looking at the new hang, and there's Dyce's picture framed by Frederick Leighton's athlete wrestling with a very phallic python.
This was really predominantly a studio composition. Some people have speculated whether he used photographs, but none exist.
So although it's a very realistic painting, it's actually a symbolic painting.
I think that's spot on. I mean, it's quite important that he's actually included himself in the painting, looking up at the sky.
You know, galleries aren't a place where I naturally find myself, unless I can bring my world into it and turn it into something else. The project that I'm making isn't really about me and my perspective on it. It's collective, because lots of different people use the bay in lots of different ways, and that's reflected here as well, isn't it? I mean, it's a very working landscape.
So is there any continuity between the past and the present?
Oh,
do people still go rock crawling
totally.
there?
These figures here, these silhouettes of the shrimpers. Yes. On the sands you do see all kinds of silhouettes, and I've got photographs that look just like that. My access to the painting at the Tate was basically to satisfy a curiosity, to get closer, and to use my lens and a flashlight to get some much tighter details on these peculiar figures in the background. And I think those figures are us, and they are now. I do think that everything is connected. And I think that's manifest in the way that I like to find new connections, or not find but reveal new connections. I could look at the surface of a painting for a long time, and there's a nice link between the surface of that painting and the surfaces that you find in Pegwell. They feel like macro versions of one another.